listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. And you can always send us your emails at www.xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV, and our main radio website where you can listen to the X-Zone 724-365 at www.xzoneradiotv.com. It is Friday, December the 18th. 6 more shopping days until Christmas. I hope you all have your Christmas gifts in line. And I finally got all my Christmas shopping done. Yeah, I know. There's probably a couple of you out there saying, I haven't done any yet, Rob. Well, that's why the Quickie Marts are open until midnight Christmas Eve, so you guys can do your Christmas shopping. Now, we're going to be talking about something that everyone who is interested in the paranormal has talked about one time or another. You've listened to the shows where we've talked about EVPs. We've also talked about the Waverly Asylum. Well, tonight we're going to be talking to James Lizotte. He's in studio here in Hamilton, Ontario. And we're going to be talking to James about his crusade, I guess we can call it, to the Waverly Asylum a couple of years ago. First of all, James, welcome to the X-Zone.
Thank you very much.
James, when did you get interested in the paranormal, and what was it that drew you to this wacky, weird, wonderful world we all live in?
Well, that's an interesting one because it's been a while. If I look back as to what really got me interested, it more is on the creative side because I was dabbling in writing and stuff and generally started working with some of that thing. And I always was more on the spiritual side whenever I was doing anything fiction or something like that. So there was a couple of times where I was actually thinking of writing something that would involve, like, maybe a real place. Mm-hmm. So part of what finally pushed me to do something was just the idea that essentially you have to go to a place if you're going to write about it. And then I started to actually be interested in, because, you see the TV shows that basically do those investigations and stuff. And it does tend to make you actually think, well, maybe it would be actually interesting to not only go there, but to try and see not just what, you experience, but to actually investigate.
What was it like for you actually going to the Waverly Asylum? Now, you're very empathic. You and I have talked several times before tonight, and I know you're very empathic. I know you're a very talented writer. When you decided to go to the Waverly, and was there any anticipation on the drive there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a long drive. I mean, you got to go all the way to Louisville, Kentucky. So essentially, you're on the road for almost a couple of days. Wow. But during that whole time, you're sort of trying to figure out what you're going to experience. You're kind of sort of, as you say, I have admitted that there is an empathic side to me.
Sure.
So in a place like that, had a lot of emotion. So the general idea is you're sort of preparing yourself.
Okay.
I think when I went, I had anticipated like this overwhelming feeling and all this stuff. And the funny part of it was when I got there, it was totally different.
As you got closer to the Waverly, were you experiencing any empathic feelings, or was there? Had you conditioned yourself to kind of turn yourself off until you actually got there?
Yeah, I'd more or less conditioned myself. As I say, though, the one thing that was strange about it was before we even got there were things that were kind of weird because, like, we actually went there, and essentially, we decided to go in early.
Right.
We'd set up the investigation for 8 o'clock. I decided to go there at 4 to make sure that we knew where it was and make an initial contact.
Right.
So I went there, and when we were driving around looking for this place, it is really hard to find. The parking lot is off a golf course parking lot. Okay. So literally there are no signs. It's not even a road. So effectively, we were driving around in circles for about 10 minutes trying to find it. And effectively, we found it because at that time, at that exact moment, there had been an accident right in front of the turnoff into the golf course. And the police had blocked off the road and were actually directing people into the golf course parking lot. So literally, otherwise we would have driven right by it. We couldn't go there. We had to turn around in the golf course parking lot. We turned into the golf course parking lot, and there it is.
Well, how would you describe the exterior of the building?
Oh, it's massive. And it's funny because you think a building of that size would not really exude anything, because even though it's old, it still sort of looks like any other building to a degree, but there's some real nice architecture to it. But 4 stories and then the wing effect, like the general idea, it was built at a time when sanatoriums were built in wings. So it's kind of like a W if you look at it from the air.
Right.
So the length of it is... It's massive. It's a good, I would have to say, 4 football lengths in length, and then 4 stories tall. And it's kind of hard to believe that it was built in the 1920s.
What's the history behind the Waverly for our listeners who may just be joining us for the first time?
No, that's an interesting one, because I did all of that research naturally before I went there. And a lot of it is the lore that basically creates what they've turned it into. And that is the fact that in the early 1900s, the only real cure for it, and they had the idea of, was fresh air and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was also to get people in the population who are infected away from people in the population that aren't infected.
Right.
And, that was what this was. So the original building, built in about 1910, was originally only supposed to hold about 200 people. And, well, actually, I think the original was like 30, and then they had to go up to 200. And then they eventually built this, which was never meant to be used long-term, but could hold over 500 people. And they used the old buildings for the doctors and stuff. And there was all sorts of research done there. There were operating rooms, which the operations were kind of barbaric, if you want to really think about it. Like, one of their main operations for curing tuberculosis was to literally pry your rib cage open so that your lungs could expand more.
Oh, my gosh.
And that was what they actually did as a treatment. And a lot of the time, these treatments as much killed the person as it did cure them. But in the 1950s, when they finally basically found this cure for tuberculosis, the treatment, the building basically sat for a couple of years, and then it became a state-run retirement seniors, whatever you want to call it. Because basically, because it was state-run, it just meant homeless people who were older.
I see.
And they were all kept there. And basically, that was shut down in the 80s for mistreatment of patients. And then after that, there was so many different changing of hands, it was ridiculous. But during the period that it was a tuberculosis sanatorium, the argument was that somewhere in the area of anywhere between 3,000 and 10,000 people died there, because of the concept that most people who went there were just waiting to die. That was all they were really there for. And that was the history of the building. They actually had something that was originally built down to the railway below, because it's high up on a hill. And there's a railway that goes right in behind. And what they had done was they had built a supply tunnel. It was just this, it's about 200, 300 feet long concrete supply tunnel,
right,
with a little cart that could go up and down it and stairs. And essentially, it was meant to supply the place. When the worst part of the tuberculosis thing was going on in the 1930s and 40s, there were so many people dying that they didn't want the patients to see how many hearses and stuff were going to the front of the building. So what they did was they started reverse engineering the tunnel to, instead of bringing stuff up, they would ship the bodies down the tunnel and they would get onto the trains below, so that the morale of the living patients wouldn't be affected by seeing how many people were actually dying.
So people who went to this asylum basically knew it was a one-way trip.
In many cases. The whole and their families knew. The general idea was, if you had a family in those days, they were usually fairly large. So your whole concept was to protect one. You can't, if you got 5 kids, one of them gets tuberculosis, if you can send them away, the others have a much better chance of surviving. And so there was all sorts of those things that were going on as well.
Was there an average age that you were able to establish for the patients that would go there?
For the tuberculosis years? It actually ran the gambit pretty large. Most would be in their 20s to 30s. There were younger cases.
Yeah.
In fact, even now, the sanatorium itself, if you go up on the roof, there's actually swing sets set up there that basically were for the kids to play on, because there were some that were very young.
James, you and I have to take a 2-minute commercial break. We'll be right back. Exo Nation, James Lizotte is our special guest. We're talking about the Waverly Asylum, and later on we're going to play some EVPs that James took there. One of them, you have to hear it to believe it. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. Don't go away. Jesus came back now and insisted that we listen to him. How would the world be different if Christians really followed the Gospels? For 2,000 years, we've been practicing a religion. Now it's finally time to get it right. Read Liberating Jesus, new from Roberta Grimes. Meet the Jesus you never knew. Roberta uses afterlife evidence and biblical analysis to prove that Jesus is exactly right. Learning the lessons that he came to teach is the reason we are born at all. Roberta says he has come back now to insist that we actually listen to him so we can begin to use his teachings to unite and transform the world. Liberating Jesus wherever books are sold. Jesus has the answers, and it's not too late. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Good real estate websites are not just about showing listings, but offering visitors valuable information about neighborhoods, market statistics, tips, and personal insights. Luckily, you will find that on Roost, but you won't on many other real estate websites in Budapest. That's why we created Roost. Roost is a website with tailored results for the foreign investor, curated by Hungarian-loving expats who found their home abroad and decided to roost in Budapest. Let Roost help you get started on the right foot. Whether you intend to live, work, play, retire, or simply invest abroad, Roost offers all types of properties in Budapest, from affordable studios to luxury homes. From neighborhood insights like where to grab a great coffee or how to buy property, our team of local experts can answer your questions and speak to the direct concerns of a foreign investor. Buying foreign property is an exciting and complex adventure. It can also be very time-consuming and costly if you don't have the best information and resources at hand. Roost provides professional real estate services and assistance to an international clientele of foreign property investors and rental apartment owners in Budapest. For more information on Roost, visit their website at www.roost.co. That's www.rooste.co.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you live and around the world from our broadcast studio in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone at xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. And our main radio website, xzoneradiotv.com. Don't forget, X Zone Nation, the Psychic Edition. That's the late December edition of the X Chronicles newspaper, will be available to one and all on December the 27th. And in this edition, we have psychic predictions from a number of the psychics who have been here on the X Zone. And you know what, James? I give these psychics who actually send us their predictions to publish rather gutsy people, because we put it in print. And what we do in our December issue is we go back to the last year's issue and we say who was right and who was wrong. Once again, that's the X Chronicles newspaper, and you can get your copies online at www.xchronicles-newspaper.com. James Lizotte is my special guest this hour, and we're talking about James' investigation into the Waverly Asylum with a group of paranormal investigators. Now, James, how long were you actually in the Waverly with the other investigators, and how many people were in the entire asylum with you guys?
Well, that was the one thing I had figured that I really had to arrange. Because, I mean, I knew that there was a situation where you could have as large a group as you wanted and such like that. Mm-hmm. And it was, you could have the place for 4 hours or 8 hours. If you wanted a half night, 4, full 8. And I was like, you know what? I really need to experience the whole thing.
Sure.
Originally, when I had first thought about doing it, there was even a part of me that was going to go, well, I could always go by myself. And that might make it really interesting. But then I had always heard that, you know, if you're going to do a true investigation, mm-hmm. the general concept is you need to have others to verify what you do. And I didn't know anyone like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had booked the actual night, the Waverly Sanatorium has a number of forums that are connected to their website. And on one of those forums, I just put out there, well, would anybody want to come with me?
Mm-hmm.
I will be making a long drive, but effectively anybody in that area that wanted to come. And 3 individuals actually answered, 2 brothers and another guy that they knew.
Right.
And they said that they had done investigations in the area, but they'd never been to Waverly alone. They'd gone on the group tours and stuff like that. So they'd been there when there were 20 other people. With me, I basically said, no, it'll just be me and whoever I choose to take. And they came back and said, well, we'd love to do that. And, we'll pay part of it and all this. And the general concept was, I was like, well, because they also came back with, we are going to bring infrared cameras. We are going to bring, they had other types of digital cameras and things that basically I didn't have access to. So they brought a lot of the extra equipment. And in the end, it ended up being just the 4 of us. And that was the one thing that was promised from the owner of the building, that there would be no one else in the building for that whole night.
So they open the doors, let you guys in, lock you in,
Yep.
And they come back 4 or 8 hours later, and
there is one way that we like they have a sort of like a green room, like an area that you can go to
right.
partway through the night to just sit down for a little while if you want to take a break,
right?
Because it can be draining.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it can.
So the general concept is that they have this away area that you can get to. And it's not through the front doors. It's a side tunnel into a part of the building that used to be like the maintenance areas and all that.
Right.
But other than that, yeah, you pretty much are locked down.
God forbid if you have to get out, are there emergency exits that you and the rest of you could actually run out of and
Well, that's one of the secrets of like tuberculosis sanatoriums. Like you call it an asylum. It was never really an asylum.
Okay.
It was a sanatorium.
Sanatorium, all right.
Which is a different thing.
I said corrected.
Yep.
Okay.
So the general concept is the entire building has, like, all 4 floors have giant spreading balconies that are like, just you can walk from one end of the building to the other on these balconies, because the main cure that they had was to give people fresh air.
Right.
So the general idea is that they would actually wheel the beds out onto these balconies. So for all intents and purposes, once you got to the first floor, everything's an emergency exit.
Right. Okay.
But essentially the stairwells and stuff were all well marked and everything else.
Okay, that's good. Now, during the investigation with you and these other 3 paranormal investigators, they brought in infrared cameras and other equipment.
Yep.
Did they catch anything on their videos?
That was the funny part of it. We caught nothing on video. And for me, I can sort of understand that. Infrared can pick up some things, but you've got to be in the right place at the right time, because it was a handheld infrared camera. They had IR cameras on the 4th floor that we set up static.
Right.
And the only thing we caught up there was a raccoon that had snuck into the building. Like, literally, they sent me this little clip at the end when they said, oh, yeah, well, we didn't catch anything on video, but we caught this unwanted guest. And then you look at it, and there's this little raccoon just sauntering across the hallway. And,
You didn't catch anything on video, but...
Yes.
Tell our listening audience about the audio.
Yeah, audio was kind of different. Because essentially, and I think that to me often is the case with this type of investigation, you're more often than not going to catch EVPs, because essentially, you're dealing with something that it's mostly on an energy level. So if they can communicate anyway, you would think it would be through, especially with digital the way it is now.
Right.
It's a lot more sensitive to electronics. And we actually picked up about 5. And some of them were definitely out there. It's weird, though. One of the biggest problems with it is you'll spend 8 hours in this building.
And then work the third floor.
I'm sorry, I cued that and I accidentally hit it.
Whoops. The weird part of it is you'll actually spend 8 hours in a building looking to get 2 seconds of somebody saying something that wasn't there.
Over the years, James, and I've been doing the show 25 years, I don't know how many people I've had on the show with EVPs. And I have never heard an EVP that I could actually understand until I heard the one you played for me.
Yep.
Set us up, and I'm going to set up this EVP, and we'll play it for the listeners.
That was the strange thing about this one. What it was a bunch of us, like the bunch of us, all four. We were all 4 men.
Right.
So effectively, it was all male voices. We had sort of done a huddle on the 4th floor.
Right.
Where the IR cameras had been, because we'd gone up to check on everything. And what had happened was, earlier in the evening, 2 of the individuals had seen something on the 3rd floor that they thought was an apparition. Now, I unfortunately was not one of the ones that saw it. Mm-hmm. But the 2 of them agreed that they'd seen the same thing. So we knew that there was something on the 3rd floor that they were interested in looking into more. So we were all huddled in a group, and we're talking about what we're about to do. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we said was, one of them said, all right, we're going to go back to the 3rd floor. And that's when we got this.
All right, this is what was heard after. Now, before we play this, tell our listeners how an EVP works and what an EVP is.
Well, essentially, an EVP, as it works, supposedly it's like if you can get energy from the air as far as a spirit, whatever, it can impress itself into digital recorders and such.
Right.
And what it really is a situation where something is said into a recorder that you have recording, but no one in your own group hears it until you play it back. And it's a voice that was not there when you were actually there.
All right, so this is the EVP that was... on which floor was this?
This was on the 4th floor when we were thinking of going back to the 3rd.
All right, now, you were talking to some the other investigators, and you said...
No, somebody else said to me...
Right.
That he was explaining to actually all of us. So what we're going to do is go back to the 3rd floor.
And this is what was on the EVP.
Yeah.
And then work the 3rd floor.
Go back.
Right there.
All right, I'm going to play that one more time. Listen to the female voice on this EVP when there were no females in the building at that time. Here we go again, Exo Nation.
And then work the 3rd floor.
Go back.
It's clear as day. All right, go back. As if you're being given permission by this unseen entity who obviously could see you.
Yep. And the funny part of it is that recorder was actually in the guy's pocket the whole time, running. So essentially, it wasn't even out in the open, and that is so clear. She would have to have been standing pretty much right where we were standing, and we were in a huddle. So it was kind of weird because, there were no... And this was the middle of the 4th floor, so nobody could have snuck in from behind or anything else. Like, we're talking middle of the 4th floor.
What was it like when you heard it, when this EVP was sent to you? And you knew for a fact there were only 4 of you, no women, and there was the voice.
Yep. I was like, well, okay. Obviously, we were given permission to do things every now and then. It was nice to know that they agreed with us, but that was about it. You can't really think. At that time, you're just going, wow. Because even I had to go, wow. It's like, I know that there was no one else there. So how is this voice there? And that was it.
I'm going to play it for you one more time, Exo Nation.
And then work the 3rd floor.
Go back.
There it is right there. All right, go back. James, you and I have to take our news break. Please stand by.
Yep.
Exo Nation, James Lizotte is our special guest. We're talking about EVPs at the Waverly Sanatorium in Virginia, right?
Nope. It's Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville, Kentucky. Well, I was in the right country anyway. Send us your emails. Tell us what you think. X-Zone at xzoneradiotv.com. Chat with us on Skype. And, or give us a call, 800-610-7035. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. That EVP is truly awesome, and I'll play it again for you over the next half hour as we continue from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Are you a believer or are you a skeptic? Send me your emails. If you have a special guest you'd like us to bring on the show, if you'd like to discuss a specific topic, you, the members of the X-Zone Nation, are growing stronger each and every day. You know, X-Zone Nation, according to our statistics, more than 3 million of you listen to us each and every day, right around the world. Thank you for making us the show we are, and thank you for allowing us to grow and to reach more people and hear more stories and bring the truth out of the closet where it deserves to be, in plain view, because fact is stranger than fiction. I'll be right back after this break. Don't go away.
Wait a second, 3 million.
What if Jesus came back now and insisted that we listen to him? How would the world be different if Christians really followed the Gospels? For 2,000 years, we've been practicing a religion. Now it's finally time to get it right. Read Liberating Jesus, new from Roberta Grimes. Meet the Jesus you never knew. Roberta uses afterlife evidence and biblical analysis to prove that Jesus is exactly right. Learning the lessons that he came to teach is the reason we are born at all. Roberta says he has come back now to insist that we actually listen to him so we can begin to use his teachings to unite and transform the world. Liberating Jesus wherever books are sold. Jesus has the answers, and it's not too late. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com.
Hear ye, hear ye! The King has just announced the release, no pun intended, of the latest book of comedy, The Endearing Fart by Eileen Dover, noted fartologist. The endearing fart from our butt does it dark. Without it we'd all suffer inside. So let it be, release it with glee, it's not comfy or easy to hide. The social norm would have us conform to withholding our gas for decorum. I'll not be a martyr, but rather a farmer. I'll risk being thought of a moron. But noisy but free, come fart with me. Will not be shy or unyielding. A smelly toot? Who gives a hoot? It's natural, healthy, good feeling. The enduring fart is the perfect gift just for about anyone. Buy now at tinyurl.com/to-buy now.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
The Carl O'Helvey Holistic Cancer Foundation is a new nonprofit foundation that focuses on a holistic approach to cancer that includes physical, mental, spiritual, and political aspects. Cancer education, research, and care are provided for all types of cancer patients. You can listen to interviews with cancer doctors and survivors and read research on holistic aspects of cancer at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com. That's www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
And then work the third floor.
I don't know, Exonation. 25 years doing this show. I've been listening to EVPs I don't know how many times. This is the first EVP that I've ever heard that I can actually understand what is being said. All right, go back. Imagine being given permission from the other side to do something that you really don't know you're getting permission to do from the other side, because you can't hear the other side until you go home and listen to the tape. James, why do you think that this entity gave you and the other three investigators their permission? Let's say her permission, because this is definitely a female voice.
That's a very interesting question, because I'd never actually thought of it that way. Because the concept of being given permission, it didn't really come to mind until after I heard it, sort of. But it was like, for me, I honestly believe, and, you know, I am a skeptic in many ways.
Yes.
There are some things that I don't say specifically I can 100% prove.
Sure.
But the general concept is, if the experience warrants giving it some kind of, you know,
validation, credence,
you have to go there.
See, I don't look at you as a skeptic. I look at you as a realist.
Yeah. Yeah, to a degree.
Yeah, because a skeptic is unwilling to change their mind, where you are a person who wants to, you want the truth.
Yep.
And you want evidence.
But I think one of the things, and I guess it would sort of almost go into what I was even planning on writing, the general concept, was always that if you treat history and the building and whatever may be there with respect,
right,
that means something. One of the biggest problems I have with so many people who basically go on larger trips or do things, you know, and they're like joking around with it and all that, is if they actually experienced anything, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, they're actually paranormal tailgate parties.
Yeah. Because the general concept is, like, how are you treating any of it with respect?
That's right. And you know what? That is one of the key things when I'm talking to somebody, is how they respect what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that says a lot, number one, about what they're talking about. It also says a lot about the person themselves.
Yep.
And when you talk to someone who has respect for whatever they're doing, they're serious. And you know you're not going to be given a... you don't have to bring the bull crap shovel and the high boots with you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the general concept is, I honestly believe if there is an actual entity that basically is conscious, shall we say, one that's intelligent and capable of interacting,
right,
they are going to be just as interested in what you're doing as you are in what they're doing. And they'll be right there for the whole thing.
You know, you and I were discussing during the news break, you know, how people were were feeling listening to the segment. And I've got a Skype here from one of our listeners who says, and this is a quote, "Goosebumps all over."
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah, imagine being there.
How did you feel?
That was it. It's like, the funny part of it is, for me, being the type of person I am, my niece actually drove with me on the trip. And she has a bit of an empathic side as well.
Mm-hmm.
She drove into the driveway of that place and she said, "I am not going any further. I will not go near that building."
Wow.
And that was it, because I basically said, "You can come with me." And she's like, she got as far as the driveway and just, "Nope, I ain't going there."
Really?
And she actually looked at me and said, "And I'm surprised you can too." But for me, I did find that when I entered the building, I had expected a flood of stuff. And instead, I got a trickle. And I don't think it was necessarily the whole concept that there was nothing there. I think that it was a concept of you couldn't feel everything that you could feel in that building. Not with everything that had ever happened there. I mean, that's part of the whole thing, is the history itself has to be respected. And at the same time, you can't deny what happened there. You can't deny what happened to the people there. And you can't, there's no way you can ignore the history. But I honestly believe that, and that's always been my belief, that a lot of these buildings that had a lot of tragedy and a lot of death have become batteries of a form. Mm-hmm. And they store a lot of emotion. Because you got to think of how many families were torn apart in that place, how many people never came out. All of that stuff, you can't tell me that type of emotion doesn't make an impression.
Yeah.
And it makes a massive impression, truthfully. But it kind of bothers you when you can think that there are people who go and they go and it's fun. And I'm like, no, you got to imagine what this was like. Like, you know, you're sitting there waiting to die, more or less.
Yeah. Like, you know, your days are numbered and it's just, when is it going to happen? Why do you think that some of these spirits lingered behind while others, according to spiritualists, go to the light, and other ghost investigators or paranormal investigators? And let me ask you this question first.
Yep.
Why do they call themselves ghost hunters when when you go to hunt something, it's to kill them? These are already dead.
Yeah, paranormal investigations is a lot better of a term. Because ghost hunting is it's a totally disrespectful term. Where is it respectful? Yeah. And you watch some of these shows and stuff where they tell you to provoke the spirit. And I'm knowing that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. If you actually believed in this and believed in the entity itself, what are you going? You're going to walk into a building and say, "I demand you show yourself so that you can prove you're here." And I'm like, what? You know, nobody's going to do that. Like, the general idea is if you do that, you're not respecting what you're doing.
And you're asking for trouble.
Yeah. And that's if there's something. Yeah. Even if there isn't, it's still disrespectful to the place.
Exactly.
And that's my problem with that.
As well as the memory of those who perished.
Yeah. Because you cannot deny that, you know, there can always be arguments over how many people.
Yes.
There can never be arguments of the tragedies.
Right.
Because they were there. There is no doubt about it. Like, there were people who were experimented on in these places. There were kids who basically were abandoned by their families and probably never even told that they were leaving.
Oh, gosh.
Like, literally, drop little Janie off at the front door, say goodbye, and then get out of there as quickly as possible. Tell them that you're going to come and visit and never show up again. And she could live another 6 years and never see her family.
Talk about heartbreak.
And that happened there.
Sorrow.
Yeah.
Guilt.
Yeah.
Shame.
And you try and think of... And then, you know, the one thing that I always found interesting about places like this is when they finally get closed down...
Right.
They never have a happy ending as a building either. Almost always, every sanatorium where thousands of people died becomes like an old folks' home that basically another 1,000 or so died. It's just like... And 90% of the time, it's not positive, whatever happens there afterwards.
A lot of negativity.
Yeah.
Just keeps on creating negativity. Do you think that once the cycle of negativity is started, that it has to be perpetuated and that nothing good could ever come out of this?
There is a degree of that, because the general concept is, if what I say is true about a building becoming a battery of emotion, and most of that emotion being negative, no one's ever going to walk into that building again and go, oh, this is such a happy place.
Yeah.
I think I want to buy it and move in with my family. If it actually does exude that feeling, it'll never be used for anything other than something state-run or something that basically people are put there again because people won't choose to be there.
The interior of the sanatorium, is it maintained, or is it dilapidated, dirty, filled with garbage? The floors are messy. The lighting doesn't work.
What they've done is they've basically kept it abandoned. And by the term abandoned, whatever's in there, what's on the floors was there 10, 20 years ago. There is still some equipment and some furniture, not a lot.
Right.
The paint is all peeling off the walls, and your basic. There is no electricity other than a few receptacles that they've put in for people to use for equipment.
Right.
So essentially, there are no lights. You're walking around in the dark the whole time. The strange thing that happened to me on the second floor was the group had started walking down to go back up to I'm going back to the third floor again.
Right.
But anyway, they had started walking to the stairwell, and I decided to lag behind on purpose, just to sort of like snap a last picture or things like that. And so I slowed down, and they got farther and farther away. They got to the stairwell. I was still in the hallway, and I swear it just got pitch black. Totally. Like you couldn't see anything. It was ink black. And I just, the hair on my back just stood up. And I was like, okay, maybe I don't want to be alone. And that was it. I just started moving as quickly as I could. Because, during the whole night, it never got that black. But that one moment, it scared the crap out of me.
Like a black void?
Yeah. You couldn't see anything. Wow. Again, it's a personal experience, which is a lot of what any type of paranormal investigation is going to be. Television and that tries to make it look like there's a whole bunch of things that you can experience as a group, and most of it is personal experiences. You have to swear what you saw was what you saw. What you did is what you did. What you heard, except in the case of a few small EVPs.
Right.
You don't have any real proof other than in your own mind.
How do you think, James, because you are empathic, those who are still roaming the halls of the Waverly Sanatorium, how do they feel that they are a spectacle, that people are coming there for entertainment purposes? Yep.
I can see where you're going with this. You're probably going to the one thing that I said to you earlier when we were in my office. It was just, because I was planning on writing, and I had a story in my mind of what I was going to write, the general concept was that was what I was there for, to experience all of it and plan out the whole story. And I had a story in my head, and it was a good one. And the only reason nothing's ever really been written is because of one thing. And that was when I went back to the hotel at 7 a.m. after being up all night. I had to go to bed, get some rest. So I slept from 7 till 2 in the afternoon. My whole plan was to do a whole bunch of notes and stuff like that. When I got up at 2 in the afternoon, the only thing that was in my head, the only thought, was, "We are not your dog and pony show."
Wow.
It was the only thing that I thought of to write at that moment. And I thought it was a great dedication type thing. But the thing was that when I actually thought about it, I went, that's not I don't say that. That's an old term.
Sure is.
And it's a term not used often. But it does mean one thing. Don't expect us to perform for you. We're not your dog and pony show.
When you look at the so-called reality TV shows, and you and I touched on this briefly, I used to go on ghost tours, ghost investigations, and I found it to be a farce. It was a mockery of, number one, the respect that the people, and they are people, their memories we're not getting, and that the sensationalistic aspect of the television show or the ghost tour or the ghost investigation was sickening.
Yep.
Revolting.
Certain places I don't believe should have it, not on that level.
Yeah.
It should be serious investigation only in some ways because of the concept of just... if you go with a large group, and I have, on a couple of bus tour type things, it's fun to a degree.
Yeah.
It's a group thing. But essentially, you can't expect much out of it. Because essentially, you're putting yourself in a position where, number one, if anything did happen, there's so much going on around that there's no way that you could actually prove that it wasn't just someone else.
Right.
And it takes the whole personal aspect of the thing right out of it. And if you are in any way empathic, having all of these living people basically clouding it all makes it impossible for you to really get the feel for the building anyway. So it's essentially a totally different feeling when you go on one of those than it is to actually have just four of you in this building.
Right.
One of the things I also had to say about Waverly Hills was when I was doing research for it, one of the most, what's the best word, hyped, or one of the things I said constantly was, you'll see tons of shadow people. And the concept of shadow people is pretty simple. It's like when you look down a hall and you can see shadows moving. And Waverly Hills has been famous for that. And I can honestly say I experienced it.
Okay.
However, the one thing I could never doubt or never really lose that doubt of was the concept that because they had said so many times, you'll see hundreds of them, you'll see them all over the place, how can you say that what you're seeing isn't just your mind telling you what you're supposed to see?
Preconceived suggestion.
Because all shadow people always are. And it's never like you actually see a shadow literally walking slowly one way or another. It's, oh, look, there's a head peeking out from a kind of corner, or a head peeking out through that one window. So it's always just glimpses, and then it's gone. And for that type of thing, your eyes can deceive you. Your mind can deceive you. I'd like to believe what I was seeing was something else, but when I think about it, just the flicker, and that's all it ever was a flicker, is something that can be planted in your head. And that's something you have to think about when you go on any of these things. That it's so easy for someone to plant something in your head as to what you're supposed to expect.
Right.
And then you see it. Or you hear it. And I think you had mentioned something where you had gone on one of those and they basically said, oh, you can hear hear the violins. Or
exactly. That's when I went on the last ghost tour of Fort George with Kyle Lupton at Ghosts of Niagara.
Yeah.
And, everybody was saying, I can hear the violins or I can see this. And research had shown us that the fort was actually in a totally different place during its actual stay from where it had been rebuilt with all new material. So, it's power of suggestion. The mind is a very, very powerful tool. And if you believe something...
Yeah. I mean, with EVPs, the big problem is that it's not that you hear it. It's that a digital device hears it.
Let me play
and
that
you
one.
don't.
Let me play that one more time.
And then work the third floor.
One that doesn't go anywhere. All right, go back and we'll leave.
All right, go back. One more time.
And then work the third floor.
One that doesn't go anywhere. All right, go back and we'll leave.
4 guys. The building is locked. You're in a huddle. You can see each other. No women in the building, and yet it plainly says in a lady's voice, all right, go back. You are being given permission from the other side to go back.
Yep. Yeah, those are the types of things that make you say, well, there's something.
There is something.
Because you can't be 100% sure of what, but there is something.
If you could make any changes in the way that paranormal investigations or ghost tours or ghost trips or whatever you want to call them are conducted, what would those changes be?
Now, that's another interesting question. To me, like, there are some places where, if it's an old building like a train depot or something like that, and it has a rumor of being haunted, but you don't really have any reason to believe it, because it's not really a place where a whole bunch of tragedies have happened.
Right.
Then maybe for fun I can see a busload. But there are certain places that should be limited to... It's not something that I would say is easy to regulate, because, you can't prove that you're really interfering with anything or anyone.
Right.
But out of pure respect, there are certain things that just shouldn't be done in certain buildings. And I don't know. It's not like you can actually really establish a set of regulations for something like this.
Exactly. What about these ghost tours that go into graveyards? What's your take on that?
Once again, my argument has always been, and it's, just my opinion, always will be.
Yeah.
If there is, energies that are left behind after we've passed, it's most likely in the place where we passed. Sometimes it may be in places where there are highly emotional moments. So if you're going to get anything in a graveyard, the most it might be is a residual of a grieving family.
Exactly.
It's not going to be the individual who passed away, because that would have been somewhere else.
Exactly.
I think it's a lot more likely, if you do get anything, it would have to have been really... Because on top of that, you're not in a building, so there's nothing to trap the energy. So even if it is highly emotional, I'd have a tough time believing you're going to get much there.
What's your final word for the Exo Nation tonight?
My final word?
Yeah.
In regards to...
in general, we've talked about Waverly Hills Sanatorium.
Yep.
We've talked about EVPs. We've talked about shadow people. We've talked about respect for those who have left and are now on the other side of the veil.
I mean, the only video evidence we even had also was at the very end. I snapped a couple of photographs. And in each of the photographs, there was just this little spark of light. And it was not up against any reflective surface. It was the wrong color to be a reflection of any of the light that was around.
Right.
And when I did a blow-up of it, it looked like it was actually exuding its own light.
Wow.
It literally looked like it was creating its own light. And it was a spark, maybe the size of a speck. It wasn't dust. It wasn't an orb.
Right.
Because an orb is see-through and all this stuff, and that can easily be dust. This was a luminescent little thing. And the funny part of it was, one of them, my niece, when she came back the next morning, brought flowers to actually place at the flagpole in front of the sanatorium in respect for all of the people. And when we snapped that picture, it was just after we had placed the flowers by flagpole. And there was this little speck of light up against the concrete.
Fascinating.
And to me, that's respect.
James, you and I have to say so long for tonight.
Yep.
I want to thank you ever so much for joining us. You're going to be a regular around here. I've got a feeling about that.
Oh, goody.
Oh, goody, yay.
I can be that.
Hey, listen, my coffee's good, isn't it?
Yep.
Alrighty.
That's some of the best coffee.
Exo Nation, James Lizotte has been my very special guest to this hour. James, to you and your family, a very Merry Christmas and a healthy, happy, spiritually love-filled New Year to you, my friend.
And to you and everyone else.
All right, Exo Nation, I'll be back on the other side of this news break as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.